After 20 years of blood, sweat, and loyalty, they fired me over a cold, heartless email. But what they never saw coming was that I had already set the perfect trap. Now, I was about to watch the empire they built fall apart without me. It was a regular morning, or so I thought. The office buzzed with its usual energy, conversations about deadlines, client meetings, and the latest corporate buzzwords. I had been with Franklin and Company for 20 years, and in all that time, I had weathered every storm, every change in leadership, and every market shift. This company was more than a job to me. It was a second home, or at least that's what I told myself for the last 2 decades. Then, that email hit my inbox. Subject: termination of employment. Immediate effect. I froze for a moment, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of it. The words seemed to blur together, but I could still read the cold, impersonal language. No. Thank you for your years of service. No. We regret to inform you. Just a straightforward dismissal of everything I had built for them. All those years of hard work, late nights, sacrifices, I had given everything. And this is how it ended. My mind raced. How could this be happening? I was loyal. I had worked through the ups and downs, staying long after others had moved on, contributing to every project, and nurturing relationships with our biggest clients. The firm had changed a lot over the years, especially after the new management took over, but I had always adapted. I had given my all, and now, this. I opened the email, my heart pounding. The words were the same as the subject line: cold, indifferent. No real explanation. It was all corporate speak. Due to ongoing restructuring efforts, your position is no longer required. Your final day will be today. Please contact HR to finalize your severance package. Security will assist you with clearing your desk. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. I blinked, rereading it. I had worked here for 20 years, and this was how they decided to end it? Over an email? I sat there in disbelief, unable to process what had just happened. My hands were shaking as I stared at the screen. How could they do this? How could they just throw me away like this, after everything? I had helped build Franklin and Company into what it was, and now I was being discarded like some outdated equipment. As the realization hit me, a sense of calm washed over me. It wasn't the first time a company had made such cold decisions, and it wouldn't be the last. But what struck me in that moment was that I was no longer surprised. I had been sensing it for months, maybe even longer. The subtle changes, the dismissive looks, the way I had been slowly edged out of important decisions. I had become invisible, and I had been too loyal to see it until it was too late. But what they didn't know was that I had already seen this coming. The shock of the email quickly wore off, replaced by something far more powerful: clarity. I had spent years making the company successful, but now, as I sat there, staring at the screen, I realized something. They needed me far more than I needed them. It had taken a blow like this to shake the last remnants of loyalty I had left for Franklin and Company. But even now I wasn't angry. Instead, a sense of calm determination settled over me. I reached for my phone and sent a quick text. Call me when you can. Something urgent. It was to Catherine Winters, CEO of Winters Healthcare, one of our largest and most lucrative clients. I had built that relationship from the ground up, anticipating their needs before they even had a chance to voice them. The loyalty I had shown to this company wasn't matched by the people who now ran it. But what they didn't realize was that I had laid the groundwork for an exit long before they'd made their move. In the last few months, I had started feeling the cracks. The new management team had pushed for changes that prioritized profit over people. But the truth was, they had underestimated the value of relationships, and that's where I came in. I had kept my ear to the ground, sensing what was coming. While others had been too focused on climbing the corporate ladder, I'd been building my own safety net, quietly. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts, finding the names of a few trusted former colleagues. These were people who had seen the value of client relationships, not just the bottom line. I knew they would stand by me. Some of them had already reached out, sensing the shift in my position within the company. They were ready to follow me, and I had no intention of leaving them behind. The phone buzzed. Catherine. Ruth, I heard the rumors. Is it true? She asked, her voice laced with concern. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Yeah, it's true. They just emailed me the termination letter, effective immediately. There was a long pause on the other end. This is insane. After all you've done for them, the clients won't stand for it. I won't stand for it. I need you. Your personal touch is what kept us loyal. Not the numbers, not the metrics. You. You built this relationship. I couldn't help but smile. The appreciation in her voice was a sharp contrast to the coldness of the email I had just received. I appreciate that, Catherine, I replied, my voice steady. I've been preparing for this. I've got options now, better ones. What do you mean? She asked, a note of curiosity in her voice. I've been talking to a few people, other firms. They know the value of what I bring to the table. They see the relationships, and they're willing to pay for it. Catherine was quiet for a moment. I knew you were always thinking ahead, Ruth. You're not just any consultant. You're irreplaceable. Let me know what you decide. We'll be here. I'll let you know soon, I said, hanging up the phone. The realization that I had already laid the groundwork for my future hit me hard. I wasn't some victim of a ruthless corporate decision. I was the one who had been in control, quietly positioning myself for this moment. They had made their move, but I was one step ahead. I leaned back in my chair, allowing myself a moment to breathe. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. They thought they could dispose of me with a single email. What they didn't know was that I was already setting the stage for something far bigger than they could imagine. The days that followed felt like a blur. The email termination had been just the beginning, but now came the real work. I wasn't about to sit idly by while they tried to erase 2 decades of my contributions. No, I had something to prove, not to them, but to myself. This wasn't just about a paycheck. This was about reclaiming the narrative that they tried to take away from me with a click of a button. I quickly arranged meetings with the firms that had shown interest in my expertise. Word spread faster than I expected. By midweek, I had meetings lined up with 3 different consulting firms, all eager to discuss the potential of bringing me on board, each one offering me more than I had ever made at Franklin and Company. And it wasn't just the salary that was attractive. It was the value they placed on the relationships I had built. These firms understood what Franklin had forgotten. But still, there was something deeper. My years at Franklin had shaped me in ways that I couldn't even fully explain. I wasn't just a consultant. I had been the architect of long-lasting relationships. I had learned that success in business wasn't just about closing deals or increasing revenue. It was about trust, consistency, knowing that your clients felt valued beyond the numbers. I sat down with Thomas, my former assistant, who had reached out after hearing the news. He had always been loyal, always had my back. He knew how much the clients meant to me. "You okay?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. "Yeah," I replied, looking at him. "Just figuring things out." "I'm sure you are," Thomas said, smiling. "But I've been hearing things. Clients are talking, Ruth. They're not happy about what happened." I leaned in, suddenly alert. "What do you mean?" Word's already gotten out. Catherine Winters, Douglas from Archer Pharmaceuticals, even Belinda from Summit Financial. They're all talking about you. They're not happy with how you were treated. They're asking about you. The realization hit me. They hadn't just fired me. They had triggered a domino effect, one I hadn't expected to be this powerful. My clients, the ones I'd worked with for years, were reacting. They respected me, trusted me, and now they were questioning their relationship with Franklin and Company. I knew then that I had something even more powerful on my side than just the job offers. I had the support of the very clients Franklin thought they could discard along with me. They weren't just clients, they were my partners. And together, we were about to show Franklin the cost of underestimating human connections. The phone buzzed again. Catherine Winters. "Ruth, I just heard what happened," Catherine said, her tone sharp. "Franklin has lost their minds. I want to work with you directly. You're the reason we've been so successful. No one else has that personal touch. No one else knows us like you do." I smiled, feeling a sense of validation. "I appreciate that, Catherine. I'm putting together a plan, but I'll need you on board. I can't do this alone." "Whatever it takes," she responded without hesitation. "You name it. We're in." I ended the call with a deep sense of purpose. The pieces were falling into place. I wasn't just going to walk away quietly. I was going to build something far bigger, something that Franklin wouldn't be able to compete with. The time had come to take action, and I wasn't going to let this opportunity slip by. They had fired me, but what they didn't realize was that they had just unleashed the next chapter of my career, a chapter where I would call the shots, and it would be far more lucrative than anything they could have offered. I made a final call to the firms that had shown interest, setting up meetings for the following week. It was time to take control, to move forward, and to show everyone that the relationships I had built over the last 2 decades were worth more than any paycheck Franklin and Company could offer. This was my time, and I was ready. The next few days were a whirlwind. Every time I looked at my phone, there was a new message, a new offer, a new opportunity. It was as if the world had been waiting for me to step into the spotlight. And now that I was out of Franklin and Co., the doors that had previously seemed closed were swinging wide open. I had always believed in the power of relationships, and now those relationships were coming to my rescue. Clients I had worked with for years, some for decades, were reaching out, expressing their support and concern. It wasn't just about business anymore, it was personal. Catherine Winters called again, her voice even more urgent this time. "Ruth, I'm hearing rumblings," she said. "Some of the clients are considering leaving Franklin entirely. You've built these relationships, Ruth. You're the glue that's held everything together for them. You need to step up now." I sat back in my chair, taking a deep breath. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was bigger than my career or my personal journey. Franklin and Company had underestimated the power of trust, of connection, and now that very trust was slipping away, and I was in the perfect position to capitalize on it. I made a series of calls to other clients, Douglas from Archer Pharmaceuticals, Belinda from Summit Financial, and even some of the smaller but fiercely loyal clients that I had worked with for years. Each conversation reinforced what I already knew. Franklin had made a mistake, a huge mistake. "You know, Ruth," Belinda said, her voice calm but filled with conviction, "you're not the only one who's been treated like this, but you're the one who built our trust. You're the one who knew exactly what we needed and when we needed it." "I didn't want it to come to this," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "But it looks like the company doesn't value relationships anymore. They've chosen efficiency over trust, and it's going to cost them." "I'm with you," she said firmly. "We all are. You've always been the reason we've stayed loyal to Franklin. Without you, they've lost us." I ended the call feeling a surge of empowerment. This wasn't just about being fired. It was about taking control of my own narrative and making sure that Franklin and Company understood the true value of their actions. They had thought they could discard me and all the relationships I had built, but they had miscalculated. They didn't just lose me, they lost my network, my connections, and the trust of some of their most important clients. In the meantime, I had meetings lined up with two other consulting firms that had expressed interest in working with me. The offers were becoming more enticing with each conversation. The salary offers were impressive, but it wasn't just about the money. It was about respect. These firms saw the value in the relationships I brought to the table, relationships that Franklin had taken for granted. By the end of the week, I had received 3 formal offers, each more generous than the last, but the one that stood out to me was from Blackwell Consulting, a firm that had an ethos very similar to Franklin's original philosophy. They believed in long-term client relationships, in understanding the needs of their clients before the clients even spoke them. And they offered me something I had never had at Franklin, a seat at the table. They wanted me to lead their client relations division, a role where my expertise and connections would be at the forefront. As I sat down to review the offers, it was clear that my next move would be a game changer. I had been offered a fresh start, a new path where I could rebuild, not just for me, but for all the clients who had supported me throughout my career. But the most satisfying part of it all was knowing that the power lay in my hands now. I wasn't just a casualty of corporate politics. I was the one with the connections, the expertise, and the loyalty that companies like Franklin and Company couldn't afford to lose. I closed my laptop and took a moment to reflect. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of something bigger, and I was ready for it. I took a few days to process everything, the whirlwind of offers, the support from clients, and the growing realization that I had been more than just an employee at Franklin, and Company had started to sink in. My next move had to be deliberate, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The firing, though painful, had set into motion a series of events I could never have anticipated. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about proving that human connections were irreplaceable. Franklin and Company had been so focused on the bottom line, on cutting costs and streamlining processes, that they had completely lost sight of what mattered most: relationships. The phone rang again. I looked at the caller ID. It was Arthur. I hadn't spoken to him since I left the firm, and I wasn't sure how to feel. After all, Arthur had been the one to bring me into Franklin and Company. He had been the one who had encouraged me to build lasting relationships with clients, to understand their needs, to treat them like partners. But now it felt like he had abandoned me just as easily as Dominic had. I answered the call, taking a deep breath. "Ruth, I heard about what happened," Arthur said, his voice tight. "This wasn't supposed to happen. You should have been consulted. You've been with us for 20 years. I never wanted it to come to this." The words felt hollow. I had heard enough of those empty platitudes from Dominic. "I'm sure you didn't," I replied calmly, trying to keep my voice neutral. "But this is where we are now. You weren't there when it mattered, Arthur. You allowed things to slip. You didn't protect me. And now, well, now we're both dealing with the consequences." There was a long pause. I could hear Arthur's frustration building on the other end. "I know, and I'm sorry. I wish I could have stopped it, but it was out of my hands. The new partners, they're running the show now." I let out a small laugh, not out of humor, but out of disbelief. "Out of your hands? You've built this firm. You were the one who set the tone for everything. You told me, 'Ruth, relationships are everything.' And now you're telling me it was out of your hands?" Arthur's voice softened, regret creeping in. "I know, but I want to make this right. What if I bring you back? We can call it a misunderstanding, a communication issue. You know how these things happen." I wasn't surprised. Arthur was a businessman, and this was about saving face, about salvaging what little he had left. He wasn't offering me my dignity back. He was offering me a chance to return, but on his terms. It was tempting, just to walk back into that office to show everyone that I had been right all along. But I knew better. I couldn't go back. "I'm not interested in coming back, Arthur," I said firmly. "You know what you've done. I've moved on. I've already received offers that value me for what I bring to the table, and the truth is, Franklin doesn't appreciate what it has until it's gone." Another pause. I could hear Arthur's frustration turning into desperation. "Ruth, please, if I can offer you something, anything, will you reconsider?" I paused, my mind racing. Then I spoke, choosing my words carefully. "You can offer me something, Arthur, but not a position at Franklin. You can offer me equity. You can offer me a seat at the table, a role where I get to call the shots, and I'll consider it. But only if you're willing to make some changes. If you truly believe in what we built together, then you'll do what's necessary to save the company. But frankly, I think it's too late for that." I, I can't offer you that," Arthur said, sounding defeated. "We're too far gone. But Ruth, I want you to know, you were the heart of this place." I ended the call without another word. Arthur was trying to save himself, just like Dominic. But what they didn't understand was that this wasn't about saving the company. This was about the choices they had made and the consequences that followed. The next morning, I woke up to a series of text messages from clients. 6, in fact. They were all asking the same thing. What now? It was official. The ripple effects of my departure were spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. Clients I had worked with for years, clients I had helped build trust with, were now starting to question their future with Franklin and Company. This was what I had known would happen. The moment they let me go, the balance would shift. Relationships built on trust couldn't be replaced by an email, and Franklin's clients were learning that lesson the hard way. I reached out to Catherine Winters, who had been unwavering in her support. "Ruth, I've heard that things are falling apart over there. How can I help?" Catherine asked. "You've already helped by being there when I needed you," I replied, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Now, we need to talk about the future. We need to make sure that we don't just pick up the pieces but build something better, something that values what truly matters." We discussed strategies, the best way to move forward, and how I could start leveraging the offers I had received. But the truth was, I didn't want to just leave Franklin behind. I wanted to show them what they had lost. That day, I met with 2 more firms, both offering positions that not only paid better, but respected my experience. But I wasn't interested in just a paycheck. I was interested in making an impact, one where the company's core values matched mine. By evening, the calls kept coming. Clients were leaving Franklin and Company one by one. They weren't just questioning their loyalty, they were actively seeking alternatives. And all of a sudden, I wasn't just a former employee. I was an influencer, a force in this industry. I felt an immense sense of satisfaction, not for revenge, but for justice. Franklin had underestimated me. They had underestimated the value of the relationships I had nurtured over the years. And now, as they scrambled to pick up the pieces, I was moving forward, leading the charge into a future I had designed for myself. As I looked at my phone, more texts came in, each one a reminder that sometimes losing it all is the only way to see just how much you've actually built. I knew my decision was the right one. As the days passed, Franklin and Company began to unravel in ways I hadn't expected. The firm that had once been so strong, so proud of its reputation, was now facing a complete exodus of its most valued clients. Each call I received from clients added weight to the growing sense of chaos at Franklin. They had thought they could replace me, but now they were realizing that their business was more than just systems and strategies. It was about trust, and I had built that trust over 20 years. But it wasn't just about the clients leaving. The entire industry had taken notice. News outlets started reporting on the turmoil at Franklin and Company, discussing the reasons behind the sudden shift and the mass departures. It became clear Franklin's focus on cutting costs and ignoring relationships was destroying everything they had worked for. They had sacrificed the heart of the business for the sake of profits. I watched from the sidelines, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. No, not satisfaction. Justice. I had spent my career creating value for them, only for them to dismiss me in an instant. Now, they were paying the price for underestimating the importance of personal connections. I continued to meet with other firms. Each conversation reinforced what I already knew. The real asset in any business is the people, not the numbers. The more I spoke with potential partners, the clearer it became that I was no longer just a consultant. I was a leader, someone who had built something far more valuable than what Franklin could ever offer. They had fired me, but now I was in a position to lead the industry. The phone rang again, and for the first time in days, I felt my pulse quicken. It was Arthur. "Ruth, can we talk?" he asked, sounding tired and defeated. I let out a breath, knowing that this conversation would probably go the same way as the others. But I agreed to meet him. He had been the one to bring me into Franklin all those years ago, and despite everything that had happened, there was a part of me that still respected him. We met at a small cafe near my apartment. Arthur sat across from me, looking every bit the part of a man who had just realized the true cost of his decisions. He had aged significantly in the past few weeks, the lines on his face deepening with every passing day. "I should have never let it come to this," he said, his voice low. "I never wanted to lose you. I know now that I was wrong to ignore what you brought to the table." I leaned forward, my expression calm. "You let it happen, Arthur. You let them push me out. You ignored my worth. You failed to protect me when it mattered." "I never meant for any of this to happen," Arthur said. "But I need you back, Ruth. I can't fix this without you." I stared at him, my mind racing. I could go back, but it wouldn't be the same. They had broken something that couldn't be repaired, and I couldn't allow myself to go back to a company that didn't understand what truly mattered. "I appreciate the offer, Arthur," I said finally, "but I've already moved on. I have my own future now. I'm leading a new path, one that values the very things you've forgotten." Arthur didn't reply immediately. The weight of my words seemed to settle on him, and for the first time, I saw him truly understand the consequences of what he had done. By the following week, the changes were undeniable. Franklin and Company's stock was plummeting, their client list shrinking, and their reputation was in tatters. Clients that had been with them for years were jumping ship, and the board had no idea how to stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, I was standing at the helm of something much greater. Blackwell Consulting had offered me an incredible role. Chief Client Officer, a position that would allow me to shape the future of the firm, focusing on the same principles that had served me so well. But I wasn't just going there for the title. I was going there to make a statement. Franklin and Company had thought they could discard me, but now I would be leading a team that understood the true value of relationships, a team that knew how to nurture and grow them, not just chase numbers. I received a call from Catherine Winters the day I made my final decision. "You did it, Ruth. You took them down without ever lifting a finger. You've changed the game. I'm proud of you." Her words were like a balm to my soul. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. And in the end, I had come out on top. I wasn't just back in control, I was in charge of my destiny. A month later, I stood in the sleek new office of Blackwell Consulting, overlooking the city I had worked in for years. I looked out the window, reflecting on everything that had happened. Franklin and Company was no longer the company I had devoted my life to. They had discarded me, thinking I was just another cog in the machine. but they had underestimated me. They had underestimated my worth. Now, as I looked over the horizon, I realized something even more important. The real victory wasn't in the deals or the title. It was in the relationships I had built. And as I sat at the head of Blackwell's client relations division, I knew that my future was bright. Franklin and Company had tried to break me, but instead, they had propelled me toward something far greater. In the end, it wasn't just about a job. It was about proving that no matter how hard they try to push you down, if you know your worth, there's always a way up. The firing, the betrayal, the hurt. It was all part of the journey. But now I was in control, and nothing could take that away.